If you just booted up Cat Mail Company and were like, okay, it's just organizing cat boxes, how hard could it be? I've got news for you. This game is way more strategic than it looks on the surface. I've put together 10 tips that will help you progress much faster than I did on my first run, because trust me, I made pretty much every possible mistake before figuring this out. So stick around, I'm Mary, and the video is about to start. This tip is among the most critical because in Cat Mail Company, an error isn't just a matter of incorrect stacking, it creates a problem that will follow you around for several minutes. My line of thinking is always this. Before placing any box onto a stack, I take a quick look at the sticker and the trait, which prevents those silly mistakes that seem small initially, but later disrupt the entire workflow. Fragile packages cannot sustain weight on top of them, and heavy packages must sit at the base. Otherwise, you ruin everything without even realizing it. Playing on autopilot is where the danger lies. Your eyes hit the name and you want to drop the box immediately, but the game is hiding crucial information that completely alters where it should go. What I appreciate most about this tip is that it forces you to play with more focus and less impulse. Unlocking the scanner makes this even better, as it helps confirm what a delivery truly requires, while nighttime moonlight acts almost like a second package inspection, revealing traits you wouldn't see right away. This keeps the process safer and vastly more efficient. For me, the secret is straightforward. Once you discover a trait, address it before stacking, whether it's cold, hot, damaged, lovers, or any other condition. Handle that first and only then move it to the shipping zone. This sequence may seem minor, but it is precisely the kind of habit that accelerates your progress without turning the counter into chaos. Instead of treating this period as merely a slower continuation of business hours, I like to view it as the perfect moment to get the house in order and prepare for a much more efficient next day. For me, the real trick lies in using moonlight not just as a curious mechanic, but as a genuine organizational advantage. When it reveals special properties on packages, you get the opportunity to separate everything calmly, identify key traits, and avoid unnecessary panic when traffic picks up again. I also love this tip because it values the backlog instead of letting it become a bigger issue. In practice, the night becomes a maintenance shift. You clear out excess, reorganize inventory, and make the next boat much easier to load without that feeling of constantly putting out fires. Frankly, I much prefer sending smaller, well-organized boats than trying to cram in a messy load just to dispatch more items at once. That kind of rushing might seem productive in the moment, but it usually just causes more confusion later, whereas a clean, prepared foundation makes your progression feel far more stable and much faster. This is one of those tips that seem obvious after you learn them, but make a huge difference in the beginning. In Cat Mail Company, I always separate local pickup from outgoing immediately because it prevents that overwhelming feeling of disorder that builds up fast early on. The sooner you establish this split, the more natural your shift's workflow becomes. Packages meant for Cat Island need to stay near the counter, as those are the ones local customers will pick up right there. Everything else, however, should head straight to the boat. The problem is that when you mix the two, you waste time inspecting package after package, trying to remember what goes where, and the game's rhythm completely falls apart. I like to look at it this way. The moment you pick up a package, its destination is decided. Don't leave it to organize later, because later almost always turns into a pile of accumulated boxes and visual clutter that only scrambles your focus. Early on, the game rewards building solid habits much more than trying to improvise everything. To me, this is one of the most vital tips, simply because it doesn't look like a big deal, yet it saves a massive amount of time throughout a match. Separating local and outgoing items the second you pick up a package allows you to play with more clarity, higher speed, and fewer errors. And in a game like this, fast organization is worth almost as much as any upgrade. The game functions much better when you leave labels facing outward whenever possible, as this protects organizational accuracy and prevents packages from disappearing inside visual clutter. This becomes even more critical because when a customer comes to retrieve a delivery, they typically give you the recipient's name and a few quick details about the box, requiring you to locate it in the storage area without wasting time searching through everything. If the label is hidden, you force yourself to grab, rotate, and check package by package, and that delay completely breaks the momentum the game rewards. Personally, I like to organize as if I were setting up a storefront display. Once an item passes through my hands, I place it in a position where I can read it on the move. Cat Mail Company values a calm, consistent workflow where the physical layout of the packages acts as a checklist, far more than a chaotic rush relying solely on memory. Ultimately, this tip is a way of thinking about the game. Instead of creating extra work for yourself 2 minutes down the line, you prepare the environment so you can spot and identify everything instantly, aligning perfectly with keeping labels visible and dividing space by clear functions. It's a simple detail, but it's precisely the kind of habit that makes you look much more efficient without even needing to rush. A tip that dramatically shifts the game's tempo is simple. Pick up multiple packages at once by grabbing the bottom package of a stack, which lets you carry several items simultaneously. In a title so heavily focused on organization, workflow, and space management, this single detail cuts down a lot of time lost walking back and forth through the post office. For me, the best part of this tip is that it improves the most tedious part of the day, the arrival of packages from the boat in the task of distributing everything into the correct zones. Once you grasp this early, unloading and restocking shelves stops feeling like repetitive manual labor and starts flowing much more naturally. I like this mechanic because it feels like a genuine gameplay secret, one of those details that makes you feel like you finally learned to play smarter. Since Cat Mail Company emphasizes a clean route for receiving, sorting, storing, and dispatching deliveries, carrying multiple boxes at once fits seamlessly into the logic of maintaining efficient movement. If I were giving direct advice to beginners, it would be this. Turn this into a habit as fast as possible. It isn't just a tiny saving of a few seconds. In a game where the work revolves around sorting, moving, and organizing mail all day, this practice speeds up the entire shift and keeps you in full control of the clutter. This is one of the most important aspects of Cat Mail Company because it completely changes how you play. The game does not penalize you for being extra careful, so there's no real reason to rush and turn a simple delivery into a bigger mess than it needs to be. Here, speed without attention almost always turns into rework. I really like this logic because it removes the false pressure we carry over from other management games. If the customer is going to wait as long as necessary, I prefer to stop for a second, double-check properly, and get the delivery right on the first try. In the end, that is always more productive than trying to be fast and accidentally sending the wrong package. This makes even more sense when you consider that a missent item isn't just an isolated error. It comes back, messes up stack organization, and delays what actually matters for progression: clearing space, keeping workflow under control, and unlocking upgrades without accumulating chaos. In short, rushing here doesn't speed anything up, it just creates more work later. So I would say the best mindset for this game is to play calmly and intentionally. Cat Mail Company rewards those who keep their area organized and make correct decisions far more than those who try to sprint through the entire shift. Once you understand this, the game becomes even more enjoyable because you stop fighting the system and start using it to your advantage. When you establish this habit early, the game stops feeling like a disorganized rush and starts entering that satisfying flow of receiving, sorting, and keeping every package in its proper place. To me, the major mistake is looking at a pile and thinking, "I'll deal with it later," because that is precisely when the post office starts turning into chaos. The game itself functions much better when you maintain a clear route for packages, with well-separated areas between what just arrived, what is being processed, and what has already been organized. Since its premise revolves around organization, package handling, and space management, letting backlog accumulate only hinders the rhythm that makes the game shine. I like this tip because it doesn't just feel like good practice, it feels like the correct mindset for playing. Instead of constantly playing catch-up, I prefer clearing clutter bit by bit, as it makes it easier to spot patterns, locate packages without wasting time, and keep operations under control. This level of care pairs very well with game progression, given that operations expand with new destinations, tools, abilities, and other discoveries as you advance. Ultimately, I see this tip almost as a way to progress naturally without forcing anything. You don't speed up because you're playing frantically, but because you're playing smarter. Since cat mail code doesn't pressure you with timers or direct penalties, regularly clearing backlog becomes an efficiency choice that makes every shift lighter, cleaner, and far more productive. It's that simple habit that once integrated into your routine leaves you wondering how you ever played any other way. When you allocate shelves by destination, you stop treating each package as an isolated decision and start viewing everything as a well-organized pipeline. Personally, I love this type of strategy because it seems simple, yet it completely transforms shift speed. Instead of hunting down delivery after delivery when the boat arrives, you already have each zone prepared for its specific destination, much like setting up a smarter assembly line. The inclusion of shelf grid squares for destination stickers makes this tip even stronger. It creates immediate visual clarity. One glance tells you where every package belongs, and at departure time, you only grab what the captain is actually taking. To me, this is the kind of organization that makes the game truly click. This isn't just a tip for playing better, it's a better way of thinking within the game environment. The less time you waste deciding where to place each item, the more time remains to accelerate the overall process and keep everything under control, even as traffic begins to scale up. When you follow the logic of route, destination, weight, traits, staging, and only then captain, the game stops feeling like a cluster of random boxes and more like a system you genuinely master. I really like this order because it avoids that classic mistake of sorting strictly by size and then having to undo half the work. First, you determine whether the package is pickup or outgoing, then confirm the destination, weigh it, apply the correct weight stamps, and only then inspect traits to avoid wasting time with misplaced items. This makes the process significantly more reliable, particularly when post office traffic builds up and the margin for error drops sharply. What stands out to me most is how the sequence conserves mental energy. Instead of constantly wondering, where do I put this, you already have a set path for every delivery, reducing nearly all the careless mistakes that cause backlogs to grow. I always feel that organizational games excel when the player builds a repeatable routine, and here, that routine works because each step prepares the next without forcing you to backtrack. In the end, this tip is exactly what allows you to progress faster without feeling like extra effort. When you send packages to the correct zone and only load what genuinely aligns with the captain heading to that destination, the entire flow becomes cleaner and more predictable. Honestly, it's this level of discipline that shifts Cat Mail Company from charming chaos into a genuinely efficient operation. Personally, I find that keeping envelopes in the front functions almost like a mental shortcut because you know exactly where to look whenever a simpler, faster task pops up. Placing letters on the small counter shelves is also a very smart choice, as it makes better use of space without mixing everything with larger packages. To me, this makes the flow much more natural, since envelopes become a light category in your system, while the rest of the facility remains clear to handle bulkier items and objects requiring more attention. The section on separating special packages is where this tip really shines. Boxes with rope, scratches, or unusual shapes aren't just visual details. They are the type of item that can turn into an annoying search if lost among the rest. I prefer to treat these packages almost as a visual priority, keeping them at an easily accessible point where they can be recognized instantly. The best part of this setup is that it reduces the silent chaos that slows your progress without you noticing. When a customer asks for something with a specific characteristic, you don't need to stop everything to search the entire storage area. You've already built a system that answers for you. And that kind of agility is what makes progression feel much faster and much more enjoyable to track.